You're listening to I Love It When, and I'm your host, Mo. I'm a speaker, coach, and connector. You're in the right place if you're looking for some inspiration and you're ready to truly embrace who you are. My intention with this podcast is to help you see that you are so much more powerful than you realize. Hello, everybody, and welcome to I Love It When. I'm really excited today. First of all, there's a different feeling from being in the studio and being on Zoom. There's something about being able to see somebody's face like that much closer to me that just feels right. So I'm excited to be meeting with Totero today and to share with you guys a little bit about why I'm bringing Anne on the podcast. I actually met Anne through Kristen Wise, who you guys met a couple episodes ago, and I was referred to Anne for her past life channeling session that she did with me. And the reason I'm bringing Anne on the podcast is because I was just sharing with her that I didn't realize until recently how much me exploring my spirituality has aided in my mental health. And I'm realizing how much the two are married. They're just joined, they're together, they flow in and out of each other. And so it makes a lot more sense now why I went into social work and why I have this art and social work background, because it has really helped me so much. And so I'm thrilled that Anne said yes to joining me today, because I could talk to her really. This would be a 10-hour podcast, and we don't have that much time. But I hope that through this interview with Anne, you can get an idea of what it's all about. And perhaps if you've been curious, this might help you take that leap to do something like this that could really aid in your journey right now. So Anne, thank you so much for being here. And I want to just give the mic to you first off to share a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you got into past life channeling and regression.
Thank you again for having me. I know we chatted a little before this, but I'll say it again for everybody else. I love Margaret's energy, and I always make the joke I don't say yes to everybody. And I truly do mean that, because Margaret, you got great energy, and I'm glad to be here.
Oh, thank you.
So a little baby, I always say take a sliver to say what I do, because we're not just what we do, we're what we feel and everything else in the existence and universe of the world. So this is what I'll say, is that I have about a decade plus experience as a therapist. So I am a licensed clinician in the state of Wisconsin. I also teach. So I teach in a master's level program for other young minds and young therapists to kind of teach them how to, I always say, teach about the human condition in a human way, right? So I do that. And then there's this whole other section that we're talking about today, which I am very happy and passionate about, which, although right now they're separated, right now they seem separated, right? There's very academic, therapeutic mental health world, and then there's that spiritual world. They're still on opposite sides right now. They're trying to get closer. You can feel the energy fields coming, but there's still that resistance. So this is more the spiritual realm of what I do, which is the past life work. And that's been going on. Past life work has been with me since a teenager. Formally, it's been with me since my early 20s. And I've been helping people also for over a decade with that.
Okay. And before we get started with talking more about past life channeling and regression, can you share a little bit about how the ethics part of what you do as a therapist has crossed over? Because I love your approach, and it made the experience feel so safe and so just right for me when I did it with you.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I appreciate you asking it, because ethics is extremely important on both sides. And I think that a lot of us that are coming into this healing work are feeling really passionate about that, because right now, which is an odd thing to say, there's no overriding entity that monitors the ethics of people doing spiritual work, right? Just like if people go into religious or, spiritual, whichever realm they go into, there's nobody really overseeing that. So I tend to take it very seriously when I say, or I start a reading with somebody, that I actually have some boundaries or some groundwork beforehand. And it does include, even though it is separate, and I tell people I am a therapist by trade, this is what I do, but this is completely separate. This is spiritual guidance, right? It's spiritual, and it is not therapy. So I have to really set those boundaries first, but I do inform people what I do. And I do inform people what I do so they know that that's there. I think it does kind of inform or help you find the right fit. So one of the things ethically that I talk about is just spiritually. I think people taking shortcuts when they have a lot of suffering or pain. And that's rightfully so. I was telling Margaret before this, I said, rightfully so. Nobody wakes up one day and says, yay, I want to suffer today. Not on the list. So when you feel that there's this urgency to find answers, and oftentimes That's when people find me. They look up online, they see past lives, they're like, that's it. I've had this fear of water, I've had this fear of people, fear of love. There
That's
has to
totally
be,
me.
right? There has to be something like in the past that's happened in these past lives. So
Yeah.
they come in with this urgency. And I try to tell them there is a difference between wanting this and treatment ready or spiritually ready for it, which I hold very dear to my heart. And if I feel like somebody, myself, whether energetically I feel it or just by what they're telling me, there's an urgency to the point where they'll do anything to get to it. Almost like, and not saying people are desperate, but a feeling of desperation, which is very different.
Mm-hmm.
When people have that feeling, I'm like, I really want to talk about your intentions today of wanting to do this. I need to make sure that it's safe for you and we're going in with the right questions and intentions, or this is not going to be what you need or want it to be, probably.
Yeah.
So it really starts with that. But there's a couple things. If people have severe and like persistent mental health conditions, not if they have mental health conditions at all. I do. I share that with people. I'm in my own mental health recovery with my own diagnoses, and I forever will. But I let people know that it's important that if there's active things like trauma, people are having flashbacks, they're having nightmares, they're having panic attacks.
Yeah.
It is, in my opinion, ethically, it's not time for me to do a reading with you, because medically in your here body, you need to manage that with your medical professionals before I'm ready to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And if people aren't ready, I'll decline the reading. That's why I do consults first, to make sure people truly are ready. And sometimes our here body is not ready for it right now. Doesn't mean never, just sometimes means not right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just what you just shared makes me feel like taking a deep breath, like, oh God, yes, because it's so you're acknowledging the here body that you call, which is for somebody, if you're listening, you're like, what is the here body? How would you describe that, like in layman's terms?
Yeah, just in your human form, right?
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people listening. You're like, well, there's human form, or there's angelic form, or there's all these other energies that people have, right? Mediums,
Yeah.
it could be anything.
Yeah.
People have connections to different realms and different places and different grids. So I think it's really important when you're spiritually looking at this to say, you're still in a human body, at least in this space and time continuum, right? Like this, whether it's perceived, whether you're an atom floating, it's what we're thinking about, regardless of that belief, there's still some part of a human form. So the here body is you listening to this podcast today.
Mm-hmm.
That's who I'm talking to, is that medically, physically, you still have an organism, you still have a body, you still have DNA, you have something to take care of in some capacity. And there has to be a place when you're ready for it, not just want it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I feel prompted to share that part of why I had been looking to work with somebody like you was because I have had this fear of the dark for as long as I can remember. And then also this feeling like I don't have much time on earth. Like I've just been rushing to like do whatever my mission is. And I felt very passionately that I have a mission, which is so strange to me because I'm not really like, it makes me think of like Mission Impossible. It's not like I'm Tom Cruise, like running across the top of a building, but it kind of felt like that the same. And having that session with you really helped me to better understand why I had those feelings deep inside me, because it felt like it was a part of my cells, like I've been born with it. And so I think I want to share that because I know there's probably people listening who are brand new to spirituality, brand new to the idea of adding this into their life. And it's added so much value and validation. And I'm such a feelings oriented person, emotion person, that it's definitely helped me a ton to just have more to explore and talk to us. And with somebody like you who has the experience as a therapist.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for saying that too. I know that with the I love it when, I know you end your podcast with that, so I'm not going to say it. Say what I'm going to say, but we'll come back to that. Give a little hint for the end.
I love it.
It's true though. It's really nice to hear, again, human body, we still have that little piece of ego. So those of us that are like, I'm completely altruistic and I do everything for everybody else. I am totally a serve others. I am a person where I know it's in my bones to give to other people. Yet I'm starting to realize in my own spiritual and mental health journey that there's still a little bit of ego that I like appreciation, and that's okay. I don't require it, but I appreciate it. So when I feel it, it really sends it through my body. So thank you. Thank you for that feeling.
Good.
That was nice.
You're welcome. I love how you explain it like that. So how did I know you said you started to sense this past life work when you were a teenager. What made you decide to officially start doing it with people?
That's a great question. Honestly, moving to Madison, Wisconsin, which is a strange thing there, and I'm sure you feel it by you. Like your area, there are energetic hubs, and um, in a lot of the cities, right? You think of Seattle, you think of Portland, you think of
Mhm.
Madison, you think of Austin, Texas, right? There are these energies that migrate almost, and I tend to say magnetize.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, I hated Madison before I moved here. It
Oh.
was so bizarre. I know. It was so weird because when I was a teenager, I was like, there's something about this place. Like everybody kind of looks snooty or they know something that I don't, you know? I was a 16-year-old going to basketball tournaments saying those things, right? So as I got older and I got through I do a lot of like neuroscience work in my undergrad, and I was looking around for a master's program, thought I was going into a PhD for neuropsychology or neuroscience, right? I had the curveball that I'm like, no, I need to work with people. That's just too stuffy to add up a whole bunch of scores and tell people what they're going through. They're very helpful. If anyone's a neuroscientist or neuropsychologist, you are amazing. I want to be clear. I just can't do that. It just wasn't right in my spirit. So I went into clinical work and I interviewed at the top marriage and family therapy program, at that time nationally, not just locally, and I just felt right. And I was like, I don't even like Madison. What am I gonna do? Like I still didn't feel it. And then I got here and everything started making sense. I truly
Oh.
do. I just knew in my gut that's where I was supposed to go. There were different schools that I got accepted to, and others that people would say, "Wow, how could you turn that down?" Because sometimes you know it's right.
Mhm.
The tiny Catholic college in the middle of Madison, Wisconsin seemed to have my heart, so that's where I went, and everybody just started falling in place. And when I say that, where I worked at the time, there were some people where I would get this activating feeling, like a tingling feeling,
Mhm.
where I get when people are really spiritual or you really vibe with them, and it almost feels in your fingertips. You're like, I am supposed to be around this person.
Yes.
And that's what unfolded is I said yes to one of those people and hanging out. And then it just contagion. I said, this is why I'm in Madison. I get it now. I get it now,
Wow.
universe. Thanks for the loud awakening. I was wondering, and now I'm really sure. And I learned they mentored me. They were very ethical spiritualists and very accepting because I grew up Catholic and I'm still Catholic. I tell people openly, I am still Catholic and I am also spiritual. I have this other side, and some people get confused about that too. They're like, how can you be both? It doesn't make sense. We're in war. We're in spiritual wars. You don't get to be Catholic and believe in past life regression. I do, because this is your own journey, right? This is your own journey. Don't let anybody tell you that something doesn't fit into their little compartmentalized spiritual space, because spirituality is a field. It is
Mhm.
not this spot that is set and made, right? That whole
Yes.
predestination. I truly believe that it's a field, and you go pick your flowers and you figure out which bouquet is yours.
Yes. I'm so glad that you said that because I was just got back from my retreat in Sedona, Arizona, and
Looks
I
so
was having
beautiful.
this conversation. It was so fun and so beautiful, ridiculous. I was having this conversation with somebody because I realized part of my journey has been to embrace and accept just what you said, because I was raised Catholic as well.
Hmm.
Went to a Lutheran college, dated a Baptist, dated a Nazarene,
Yeah.
had lots of conversations with non-denominational Christians, and then
Mm.
I've gotten into um, Eastern ways of thinking with spirituality. And yeah, you can be whatever, and it doesn't have to be one or the other. And I think
Yeah.
people get stuck in this place, like we've decided by other people, whoever that might be, the news, the media, that we're supposed to be us versus them always, and it's very much a with type feeling for me.
110.
Yeah. So that was it because of somebody that you met then that you had that sparkly feeling with, that you
Yeah.
decided like I'm going to do my past life channeling with them to kind of experiment with it and see.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
exactly right. There were these group of three individuals, that lived together, known each other their whole lives, actually did not bring up spirituality until their 20s. At that point, when I met them, I was in my early 20s. They were in their early 30s. And I think because of that, who I call a mentor, she was really good at saying, I'm not trying to indoctrinate or tell you this is what you need to believe, but let me provide like the meditation and space so you can just see if you can let go. right? And what it did is it unveiled a whole bunch of what we call downloads, whether in your dreams or sometimes when you're awake. It's those feelings you get, you're like, why did I just see those random images? That was really weird. And then I would share that, and she's like, oh, yeah, that's from my past life. And I just remember her saying that. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, well, I think you just figured out your gift. And I was like, and she's like, really, not trying to indoctrinate you, but try it with these people too and see what you get. And I would, when I say you have to completely let go, and by the way, everybody listening, I am a recovering perfectionist and I love things to make sense and I love science a lot. So for someone to be like, just let go, man, it's fine. Talk about a decade spiritual journey on figuring that out. But that's what she said, is you need to let go. And Margaret knows when I do my readings, I actually close my eyes the entire time. And that's not only for distraction purposes, but it's also to channel and kind of, I say, funnel the information more authentically, rather than when you are in the here body, there are so many colors, shapes, and sizes that really distract us. So I found for me when I'm channeling, I just closed my eyes and I just did these readings with them. And they said, we don't know you well, right? They didn't. I'm really good at social psychology and psychology, so I had to make sure that I knew as little about them as possible, or that they didn't really ask me for information. I said, come in with an open heart and just let me talk to you and see what you get, and then ask questions, right? And I knew things about color, shape, sizes, things that have happened to them, things that they love, fears they've had, from their favorite flower. I still remember the person that I was doing it with was like, it's so weird. You mentioned like a blue flower, and they're like, did you see like the backyard, or did you? And I was like, no, I've never seen your backyard. And I go back there and they just had all these blue flowers of different kinds back there. And they're like, I've always had a connection to blue flowers. And I said, well, that's what your spirit looks like. It's just a field of blue flowers, And they're like, I never knew where that came from. And I was like, well, I could tell you I didn't see your backyard. That's all I know. Didn't go back there.
Wow.
But
what a process to figure out what you're seeing and what it means and what your gifts are.
It is. And I hold it very dear. It's a very special thing when someone lets you in. And as you know, I asked 3 times for permission.
Yeah.
I ask in the beginning, can I do the consult? I ask after, with everything I've said, I've described it to you. Are you okay with it? And when I'm up there, I ask the guardians and the guides, is it time? And I knock on wood and I feel very special that, they've said yes every time. But I think that comes from the person getting the reading. If someone's not ready, if they don't catch it, your guardians or guides will.
Yeah. Well,
they'll know it's not time.
Like with my past life channeling that we did first, it was very clear that I had multiple protection things set up around my soul. I had like a land around it. I had animals. I had people that approached you before you were allowed. I was like, wow, okay.
Kind of a little bit of a puzzle. I was like, okay, you're really making me prove myself, Margaret. Like, I got it. It was a journey. I can tell you, it was worth it. 110%.
It was so cool. It was by far one of the coolest experiences I've had in a long time. Can you describe for people the difference between channeling and regression?
That's a good question. So channeling, I tend to think of people that use mediums like tarot cards, right? I always think of it as a funnel. What I explain to people is my job is just to funnel the information to you. I don't go up there. I don't touch anything. I don't change anything. It is my job just to create the space to get the information to you. And whatever the guardians or guides say to me, I communicate it, whether that's hard, bad, in between. It's really just channeling or bringing down the information. Past life regression, I say, is more of a hypnotic state. It is something where you're doing almost like a meditative hypnotic state where I am going with somebody. I'm bringing them with me. In channeling, you stay here and I go. When we do regression, it's an experience together. And we go up and we see and feel things, and you realize that your 5 senses, even more, as we find, more than 5 senses. I'm saying that for the here body, 5 senses, but the 5 senses come alive and you realize you actually are there experiencing it. I always say if you let go and allow yourself, but it could be alarming because it's not what we're used to here, right?
Yeah. Well, I think what I've realized too, and that experience helped me with the regression, was understanding and accepting that I've had the ability, like all these different gifts have always been there, but what's the word? I'm not undervalued, kind of undervalued them. Like I thought when I went under hypnosis that I wasn't going to have any control, that it was going to be like I
Mm,
was just completely out, and then you would like speak to my spirit or something. And really, it's very much like just a meditation, um,
absolutely.
and a visualization that you see in your mind. And so I think that's also the part about this work that I've found to be so enlightening, is that we already have everything that we need. And I've heard that
Mhm.
before, but it's another thing to experience it and realize, oh, I can really trust what I see, feel, touch, know.
Mm,
Yeah,
it's
all of
so
it.
true.
And so those
It's so
experiences
true.
with you has really helped to me to validate myself and empower me to really take charge of my journey in a different way.
I love that. And thank you. And
Yeah.
I'm glad. Thank you. And I'm glad. I am. I genuinely am. That's what this is all that's what this stuff is all about, is mutual impact. Just like you've
Yeah.
impacted me and in other ways. Even if we say, like, even if I haven't gotten a reading, from somebody,
Yeah.
everybody impacts me. Something I see, something I hear,
Yeah.
something about their strength to come and do the work.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to make that choice. It's easiest thing in your life, but it's the hardest thing in your life.
There's never been a truer statement. It's really the truth. Yeah. Yeah. Well, when somebody comes to you, can you walk us through kind of the
Yeah.
process you take? Let's say somebody wants a past life channeling.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I for sure require channelings before I do regressions. That's not only from a consultant standpoint to make sure that it's safe and it's okay and that it's something someone's ready for and that their guardians and guides are ready to give the information. But when I do the channeling, when people come, we spend a little bit of consultant time to kind of talk about, and this isn't, that part really isn't charged as the consult. Even if people want a 20-minute phone call to see if it's right for them, I don't charge people for that.
Mhm.
But I tell them about what it is, just like we did. What's the difference? They get to ask their questions about that channeling versus regression. Even if they're like, why not? Why can't I do a regression? I will tell you.
Yeah.
We go through the ethical part, the hear body mental health part, where I say, are you having panic attacks, nightmares, or these things?
Yeah.
And even though it's not a clinical assessment as a therapist, but it is an assessment as a human being to say, are you having experiences that need to be monitored? And
Mhm.
then I go to permission asking. We talk about, this is what we're going to do, what to expect, and I walk somebody through it. I get permission, and then I do the reading, which could be anywhere be anywhere from, I tend to tell people, 60 to 90 minutes. If something is really vibing or happening, I just let it happen. And sometimes I've had wild ones where they're 90 or 120 minutes. And I'm
Yeah.
not promising that to people, but I want to let people know that I won't stop something until the guardians or guides tell me it's done, because some people have a lot of information they've been waiting for. And I'm not,
Yeah.
because this is not about money, it's about service to people,
Mhm.
that I'm not going to be like, well, now you owe me an extra $100 because I spent 120 minutes with you. It's going to say,
Yes.
I'm glad we got you that,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I plan accordingly. So, and then that's what we do. And then I close my eyes. You'll see I do astral projection, and that's what physically people will see. Take this deep breath, and I allow myself to go there. And people notice my face goes kind of flat, and they're like, "Oh God, what did I sign myself up for?" And then I come there, and then they're like, "Oh, okay, it's Ann again. We're good." But
Yeah.
it does. I disconnect for a second so that
Yeah.
I can be there. And then we do the reading, and then we debrief after. So I always leave 10 to 15 minutes to tell people, if you have dreams that are vivid or you have some feelings, I don't keep a lot of clients because I see it almost as a caseload. So when people come to me,
Wow.
I make sure that if they have questions or they need to follow up with me after that I'm available. When people do reading,
Yes.
I'm like, how do you, one, take care of yourself? Two, if somebody comes to you and says, I've only had one in, this amount of years where someone said, had some really weird nightmares last night, right? That was one time, almost 10 years ago, but it's worth noting. And that
Yeah.
taught me that I'm like, I need to be available to people if that stuff
Yeah.
ever happens. Even if it's rare, I don't care.
And that's a really
Um,
good point that I didn't think about. It basically is like a caseload. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
I hold it very dear. I don't,
Mm.
people come and go and navigate, and sometimes, unfortunately, it is over quantity. Not everybody's ethical, but I really do want people to get a quality experience and protect them the best that I can while they're doing their work.
Yeah. How would you describe astral projection to somebody who's
Hmm.
never heard of it?
I always say probably people that have seen movies where you see that part of yourself. If anyone's ever seen Ace Ventura, like, I know it's terrible.
I've
It's
seen
true
that
though.
movie, not in a long time, but yeah, which is rare, just so you know, because I don't watch many movies or TV, and my boyfriend's always making fun of me for it.
I love it. Ace Ventura, when nature calls, he's meditating and you see this part of himself that goes into this different grid and he's talking, to both, his higher self and talking to other people. That's kind of what it's like is you take almost the spiritual component of yourself and your body's still here. Like, you were
Yeah,
communicating with me. I was staying grounded as Anne, my here body now. But my spiritual self, connected to my higher self, goes elsewhere. And that does take practice. It gets easier with time. I try to tell people. I do mentorships with people like spiritually. And there was a girl, I should say a young woman, I should say. A couple years ago, we did a couple rounds of mentorship, and the first thing she goes, I have to astral project in. Like, I have to. And I was like, why do you feel that urgency? And she's like, because I've been trying. Very spiritual person. She's like, I've been trying so hard. And by the second mentorship, we had her astral projecting. And it was really just about the letting
wow,
go, the here body barriers of what is keeping you back, like held back from it. What are
yeah,
you truly fearing? Because fear is often what holds us back from this work. Fear of judgment, our own internalized ableism, could be a lot of stuff.
yeah,
Once people break through it, they just soar. They really do. That's what I love about my sessions and my work. And I only normally see people 1 to 3 times. And 2 to 3 is something if people really want to do deep work or they come back,
mhm,
right? And that's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean that I don't do well in the service. That's the opposite. I see it as that they're like, I got what I needed. I
yeah,
serve my purpose. I'm so happy. Go live your life, whatever that means. And you
yeah,
come back if you need me. I
yeah,
should say 1 to 2 times or I get referrals, which is also people come once and I get referrals. And that's enough
mhm,
because I know it helped
mhm,
for them. I want that for people.
yeah.
I want
What
healing.
what is something this just I thought of this as you were talking to what is something that you wish everybody knew that maybe you could people who are nervous to try something but like this, but what's something you wish you could tell them?
That's a good question. When you see that person, I don't care what experience or who's popular on TikTok, when you see that person, you're like, they're supposed to help me. Trust it when it's in your gut. When it's in your gut or a full body experience, because we are good at telling people their heart and their head. But when it's truly your gut or that pelvic, I tend to call it the chakras, right? Like that groin region, when it really activates up to the center of your chest/stomach, if something feels like it's time, it's time. And you need to trust it and you need to take that chance. And the other thing too, just see how they talk about ethics.
Mhm.
Trust your gut about people too. Somebody comes on there and you're like, they literally only care about this money and they're going to move on to the next person. And that doesn't feel right for you. Maybe you like one and done people. They're like, get it to me quick and let me go. Cool. Then that's your style. But
Yeah.
you'll know, and don't let anyone tell you who that right person is.
Do you do past life work on yourself or do you have to go to somebody else for that for you?
That's a great question. I do it. I am comfortable and skilled enough. I do it to myself, but I didn't start there. I
Okay.
absolutely, it's like therapists who see therapists. I tell people,
Uh,
if your therapist hasn't seen a therapist, you should go to a different therapist.
yeah.
I'm the same way with this, with mentorship and everything else. I definitely got regression and channeling before I did it myself.
Okay.
Great question.
And then what kinds of questions could somebody bring to a session with you?
Geez, Margaret, it's like you've done this before. What kind of questions? Questions that are really channeled around things that haven't made sense yet.
Okay.
That you are like, I have tried everything. I've tried therapy. I've tried talking to people. I've tried coaching. I've tried my own work. Why the hell am I still having this? Those are what you bring so we can find some relief because those things really trip people up, rightfully so again.
Yeah.
So
Have you
those
ever
questions.
it's making me think, like, have you run across people who have been referred to you or just found you that have been at that place where, because I know I've met people who are like, I've tried everything and I'm still unhappy, or I'm still not fulfilled, or I still feel like something's missing.
Yep. Most all the people that come to me, they've done tarot, they've done energy work, they have done everything else. And they come and they say, this is kind of my last ditch effort. I don't really know what to do, or I'm still feeling really stuck. But sometimes it's just, yeah, like you said, we have everything inside of us. We just have to unlock it.
Yeah.
So once that's unlocked, then they go back to energy workers, they go back to coaches, they go this. And that's what I love about my work or what I do, because it's so specific that it's just about unlocking that little piece that feels stuck. And then you go back and you continue the work. It doesn't stop the work. The work does not stop with the past life regression or the channeling. And I like breaking that myth for people. It's not to depress or disappoint. It's so people know that truly the work doesn't stop. The work does not stop. It recalibrates and you find different things that you need to focus on. But don't come, encourage, don't come to a past life regression thinking that everything will bring a complete relief and you will never need any sort of guidance again. It's just the next phase.
Yeah. If anything, I feel like it helps you get to whatever that next level is. And then you like calibrate and then continue on. Like there's always something to learn. Yeah.
Exactly.
What do you find, like, what do you go through physically when you're doing these energy sessions? Like, well, I just want to call them energy because they take so much energy.
Yeah.
I'm assuming. How does your body respond physically, and what do you have to do to keep yourself in a place where you can continue to do this work?
My biggest thing I say to people is you have to practice what you preach. It is not a recommendation, it's required. In between anybody, I always have space in between. I always make sure to take care of my here body with my food, sleep, and my water. I always make sure to take care of my medical and my mental health. I always make sure to put those things first, even if I want to do good by things or I want to be here. That's just point blank. I take care of my human body and I practice what I preach, including if I have back-to-back sessions, which I don't do much of anymore, not because it's not an ability to, it's that it's just not time to do any more back-to-back. But I used to do square breathing and I used to do grounding techniques. I have my healing crystals that are next to me that aren't on screen because it's for me, not for other people. And, you know, that's what I use. And when I need breaks, I take breaks. The human body is not meant to do spiritual stuff, in my opinion, 24/7. It's hard not to get addicted to this work, and I truly do mean that. When you feel relief, it's hard not to get addicted to that even moment of relief. Just kind of a socially acceptable one, right? There's ones that aren't, and there's ones that is. When people are like, oh, I astral projected and I felt so good and I felt relief and I felt happy, and then they just are the people that go into these TikTok lives or they go to the next coach and they will just spend all their money on spiritual guidance. And I tell people, give yourself, your body some time to take that in, because there is a lot of grief associated. We're talking about a lot of relief, but from grief comes relief. So there is a lot of grief when you start finding this relief. There's a lot of regrets sometimes that come with it. Not all negative, but more so just like, wow, maybe I should have done this sooner. More imposter syndrome stuff starts coming up. I should have known better stuff comes up. Internalized ableism comes up. So I tell people part of the caseload concept is to be able to process grief, that it's a cycle. And this work, it's really, really, really tiring internally. So for me, I practice what I preach even in front of people sometimes and say, give me a second, I'm going to do some square breathing and let's come back to the reading. Or I can tell we're veering off course a little, or this is happening. I'm going to reground myself. And I really try to do, when I say in therapy, self of the therapist, my self of the healer is, I will not lie to people when I'm well, when I'm not. Or if I feel something that's off, I will tell them, I'll communicate, and we'll work through it ethically. But because I take care of myself outside of that time, again, doing it for a long time, it doesn't happen often. But when it does, I want to be honest with people.
Yeah. I love what you said about that concept of grief and relief. A lot of the grief leads to relief.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you put it. I
And vice
absolutely,
versa, yeah.
yeah. Well, I found myself absolutely in that place of when I first, I think, allowed myself to start really exploring spirituality. And once I met with a few intuitives, I was like, oh my God, why have I not found this before? And then I went overboard of like, I want to do this every week, every other day. Like it's because you've been looking for something and it's like you start to get answers and you start to get more guidance than you're used to. And then it can easily become something you rely on too much. So I love
Mm-hmm.
what you said about that and how I think I have to remind myself like, hey, I'm having this human experience for a reason. Let's just be
Mm-hmm.
human for a bit and go take a nap or just like
Yeah.
go outside. Yeah,
I love it.
that's such a good
Pet your
point.
dog. Everybody go take your dogs for a walk or your cats for a walk. I don't know. It could be pet ponies. There's a lot of emotional support animals these days, whatever they are, wherever they are. Take your partners for a walk. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, seriously. Well, one of my last questions before we end today is what kind of an impact has this work had on you and with the people that you've worked with?
I truly realize on a deep level that people need people. Growing up, even though I was social and I had a lot of friends and I was in sports, I recognize that as a social psychology thing. I was compartmentalizing it to like, this is important because it helps my mental health and this. I was building those connections, but on a true spiritual level, to grow, like we all need each other. This is not, I'm not promoting codependence. I hope people know that. The word need needs to be rebooted a little bit. People need people in the sense of for us to evolve and grow, which is a big point of my podcast, is reconnecting and rebranding it was really, this is about connecting to other human beings, about the human condition, and whether that's spiritually or whether that's through mental health, or as I'm in my business journey, figuring out how to balance those and be ethical, because I know both of them are callings and figuring that out. But I think really trying to understand where that goes and where it takes people. And I think grief is going to be a whole other concept that we don't have enough time for, but yeah, all of that's there.
Yeah, tell people about your podcast and how to find you.
So I rebranded from Healer Haven for 4 seasons to Skull Meatloaf. Oddly enough, my season 4 of Healer Haven completely turned my life upside down, and I'm not just saying that to promote it. It was a manifestation, almost a 10-episode thing about manifestation and going through the various areas. And I wasn't expecting it to turn my life around, but now I have my own business in LLC after listening to it, and I'm navigating through again, like how to do that. So it's called Skull Meatloaf, not Healer Haven anymore. It's in season 5. You'll hear a little bit more authentic human condition with humor stuff, a little bit more swearing, and definitely that stuff. And I say swearing, obviously, we were talking about earlier, when it needs to be there. Sometimes it needs to. I swear like a sailor, and I grew up Italian, so we swear more than I'd like to admit. But Skull Meatloaf can be found on any platform. And you can look up Totero, and it's the same name across Twitter, across Instagram, across TikTok. And my website's Totero. I kept that all the same just so people can find me. So yeah, I'll be excited to connect. And truly, I mean this on a deep level. Reaching out and asking questions and talking to me, I am not too busy. Even if I say, hey, tonight I can't get to it, but I saw your message, I'll catch up with you. Like my semester starts this week, it won't be this week. If somebody says they want to set up, but after the next couple of weeks, I'll be raring to go. But I will communicate the best I can with people when things come up.
Okay. And if somebody's interested in having a session with you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, that's a good question. So honestly, because it's easy for people, Instagram, or it sounds odd, but like Instagram and Twitter.
That's how I did with you. Yeah.
Exactly. And then obviously my email and my website's all connected to those things. But to be honest, social media is the best. You'll get me the quickest.
Okay.
Because it's just always there.
I love it. It makes it easy. Well, what's your current I love it when? It sounds like you've kind of prepared one.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it when you were telling how it impacted you. When people succeed, whenever that means, and I'm not talking about succeeding as a final thing, but when they hit something and you see a ripple effect that you're like, hell yeah, man. Like, that was for the right reason. That was for the right reason. I don't mean this to be cheesy. Deep in my chest, my core, I have fought with serving people because it was tiring before I figured it out. It was very exhausting. I felt like I needed to give it to everybody. I realized my perfectionism came from a deep sense of people pleasing, which, being a confident person where I didn't give a crap what people thought, you had to unveil a lot of stuff spiritually and mental health wise to see sometimes how you show you care about people can be healthy, and it can be effective. And when I look at service of people now, I don't think I need to help everybody, because I won't. I don't need even a big group of people. Yeah. I don't feel the need to do that anymore. We were talking about that before we were talking today. I was like, wow, Margaret, we're like vibing today. It has been a deep part of me that you just do what you can when you can. And that's the biggest part of healing, is I love when people figure that out. When you made a little bit of an impact, for them. I really like when people succeed. I kind of nerd out on it. Like when I was watching your Sedona thing, I was like, oh, they did it, man. And Tony, my partner, was like, why are you grinning? And who's they? And I was like, and I was teared up. I was like, just everybody. I was like, people are just doing the good work, and it's just so good to see. And he's like, go put in Wallier up, like, and go cry about it. He has been opened up by all my cheesy movies that open up emotions. That's what I'll tell people. Don't underestimate the hear about stuff like movies and music and people and trips. Yes. Everybody goes into this deep inward thing about sometimes all these past life things. There's so much in front of you that will open up spiritually. That's and so much gratitude to have.
Yes. No, I'm so glad that you mentioned that. I'm gonna be thinking about that phrase, the here now body.
It was the big switch to Skull Meatloaf. As I said, my next part of my spiritual journey is being grounded and helping people that their feet are on the ground, but they're spiritually very lost. And they don't need to talk about spirituality, but how to exist and evolve in this world as a human being today. And that's not as easy as people say it is.
There's so much that we could talk about. And I really appreciate your willingness to be here and share with people, because I know there's a whole group of listeners that I have that I'm not even aware of who have no exposure. I believe so much in this work and so much in connecting things and connecting people together to share what's possible. So I appreciate you opening that door for all of the listeners.
And thanks for asking the questions. You opened the door. I just stepped into it with you. And thanks everybody for listening. I see the good work you're doing, and people are watching. People are watching. And every time people succeed and take that step, another person says, hell yeah, like I'm going to get up and take that walk today, or go drink that water, go take that shower. So everybody just know that it impacts people. Mutual impact is very real. So thank you for the work you do too.